Hello guys, welcome back to our anime moments. Guys, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. Today is explanation of Throne of Steel episode number 181 based on novel. So let's start. Long Hao-chen's voice resonated from all directions. That's not something impossible because I didn't just override you by domain. I restrained you. My spirit is stronger than yours. Thus, even when the domains collided, I can suppress your perception and prevent you from finding my real location. That being said, Long Hao-chen was secretly surprised. The power of two great artifacts colliding was terrifying. Even though he was within range, it wouldn't have killed him. If anything, he would be completely restricted or even sealed. And if that was the case, Easton's king could have turned the table and win the battle. Easton's king unwillingly withdrew his domain of life quickly. If he were to not do so, his power would be wasted further. However, Long Hao-chen's power continued to increase while the melting of Easton's king's life force was accelerating. Believe it or not, I can bring the power of Easton into your domain and burst it up, said Easton's king with a menacing air, while he was holding his artifacts high up in his hands. Long Hao-chen smiled and said, "You can give it a try, but don't you think that you'll melt before my domain explodes?" Easton's king could not say a word with his face twisted with anger. He knew that even though Long Hao-chen's strength could not match with his strength, Long Hao-chen was still an opponent he couldn't beat. This was indeed a very uncomfortable experience for him. Of course, he could escape through the life god domain's protection, but, as the king of Easton, how could he leave his land behind and escape by himself? How could he continue to rule Easton afterwards? Easton's king was very angry, so all the colors of gold around him suddenly receded and Long Hao-chen's body appeared. After the period of recovery, the damage that Long Hao-chen got by the blast had been recovered. Having devoured a great amount of life power replenishment, the earlier manifestation of light domain did not consume Long Hao-chen's spiritual power. Instead, it fed himself and helped he restore almost all of his power. Easton's king's face became even more twisted, though only he could feel it. But all Long Hao-chen could see was his beard. He could still perceive that unwillingness in Easton's king's eyes. "Human, are you here to insult me?" growled Easton's king. Long Hao-chen, face towards him, was not defeated. Though he had reclaimed the domain, Easton's king knew that Long Hao-chen did not have the power to kill him instantly. Easton's king also could not kill Long Hao-chen instantly either, just as he could sense that Long Hao-chen's intention was not to kill him. Long Hao-chen shook his head. "Of course not. I am invited to fight with you. She told me that you have killed all her people and have taken away her family to plunder her treasures. I came here to rescue her family." "Nonsense. I'm the spokesman of the Lord of Nature on Earth. It is the embodiment of nature and the will of life. I would never do such things. Though you have the heart of light and the glory of the highest light, you still cannot insult me like this. I am the child of the Lord of Nature." Easton's king was furious while pounding those frightening weapons in his hands. Suddenly, as if he thought of something, he quickly asked, "Who is the person you just mentioned? I want to know who dares to slander the spokesman of the Lord of Nature, the great king of Easton." Just as Long Hao-chen was about to open his mouth, the whole cave shook violently. Then indescribable and powerful force emerged as Cece entered. It was the same force that made life. But it was not the force that created it, but the force that destroyed it. Easton's king became terrified by her aura alone, but did nothing. It was more as if he feared the destructive force of life and quickly backed away, and even ducked behind Long Hao-chen. At that moment, a white figure emerged from the cave and her presence unleashed a destructive force of life. The terror of undulations of power pressed both Long Hao-chen and Easton's king to the distant wall at the same time. But they soon got used to the force and flew back to the place they stood before. Easton's king looked at Long Hao-chen with both anger and horror. "Why you let a human slip into the forbidden land and steal the seeds of tree of destruction? Do you know that it would upset the balance of the whole Easton and even render all of Easton's life into nothingness?" The white figure that flashed out was indeed Cece. In her right hand, she was holding a very strange stone. The stone looked very strange, half gold and half silver, with a faint of gold and silver glow. And just where the gold and silver meet, a little seedling emerged. The seedling was pale purple with dark purple spots. And the huge destructive force of life that Long Hao-chen felt before came from this small seedling. This was exactly the seed of the tree of destruction that Easton's king mentioned. "Cece, did you see your family?" Long Hao-chen asked. Cece looked up at both Long Hao-chen and Easton's king for a moment and looked surprised. She asked, "Why didn't you take him away?" Long Houchen said, my domain restrained him, so I don't need to lead him away now. And you still haven't answered my question. Cece smiled and said, it's not important now. Brother Long, thank you for helping me get the seed of this tree of destruction, and from now on, I am the ruler of this Eastern world. I will grow together with the tree of destruction until the completion of my destruction god domain. I never thought you are so powerful that you can even defeat Easton's king. It's just if you won over him already, why don't you just kill him? But that's all right. Let me do it myself. Easton's king looked at Cece and became furious. It's you. It's you, goddess of the moon. What do you want? The last time you took the stone for the seeds of the tree of destruction. Do you want to destroy Easton? When Long Houchen heard the name Moon Goddess, he stood blankly. In his mind he couldn't help but think of that devil of the night. I haven't seen her for so many years and I do not know what happened to her. However, the god of devils at that time told me that he would do anything bad to her. Is she all right now? Cece sneered and said, you silly. If you had not forced our moonlight race so hard that we have no place to live, then how can I take this risk? I changed my faith the moment I planted the tree of destruction on the stone. Easton's king, I may not be able to kill you today, but when the Lord of Destruction grows up, I will come to you first. Long Houchen frowned and looked at Cece. Cece, that's not like what you've told me. Did you not come here to save your family? Cece looked at Long Houchen with a slightly complicated look. She sighed and said, Brother Long, I'm sorry that I lied to you. But I had to. You're too kind and trust people so easily. But it was worth it. You are so handsome, but you carry a bright legacy. You may rest assured that I will find the best tomb for you when I am fully integrated with the number of destruction. Of course, if you give up your belief in light and follow me to understand the mystery of darkness, not only that I won't kill you, but I can even marry you and be your wife. After all, it's rare for a human to be as good as you. As she spoke, Cece's body began to change. Her ears became pointed and her black hair grew slowly, with more twists and turns, spreading out behind her like big black waves. 3 pairs of transparent but emitting faint black wings spread out. The face of matchless color became more of a mysterious temptation. And her breath of life rose, not as strong as Easton's king, but at least the same level with a strong domain player. Cece's voice was not so soft anymore and became a little prouder. Allow me to introduce myself again. I am the Master of Darkness and Water, Queen of the Moonlight of Easton, Night Elf Patriarch. My clansmen are gradually driven to extinction by you humans and elves. If I don't do something, I will be exterminated. So, not everything I told you before was a lie. As for my parents and relatives, they don't exist. As Queen of the Moonlight, I am the Master of Darkness. You don't need any blood relatives. Long Houchen was silently watching Cece as she was speaking with an unchanging facial expression. Easton's king cried while he, yet again, stroked his sacred artifacts and the domain of life glowed bright green. Moon Goddess, do you think that you could get away today too? Moon Goddess Cece smiled and said, get away? If it was before, maybe you would still have a chance to keep me here. But now, as she spoke, she lifted the tree of destruction in her hands, and the dark breath of life with its icy coldness poured rapidly into the stone. All at once, terror and oppression, many times more powerful than before, burst forth, and the domain of life of the oppressed Easton's king shrank rapidly. The tree of destruction is the companion of the tree of eternity, which is the home of the Lord of Nature. Though you are the spokesman of the Lord of Nature, how can you compete with the tree of destruction? You are not strong enough to keep me from leaving, even if the tree of destruction is only just sprouting. Long Houchen stood in front of Easton's king, and all the colors of gold burst forth in an instant, protecting Easton's king's domain of life. The destructive breath of the tree of destruction was not as potent as it was in the domain of light. At least Long Houchen didn't step back. The two domains clashed with each other, emitting a faint sound. There was a trace of resentment on Cece's face. Brother Long, are you going against me? Long Houchen frowned. It seems like I was wrong. Cece smiled and said, what's the use of knowing that now? You always get the short end of the stick since you are so naive. Consider my offer. Follow the darkness and I'll keep you by my side forever. Under one man, above 10,000. Long Houchen shook his head gently. I was wrong, but not too wrong. Good people are not necessarily stupid. It's not too late to make up for my mistake. Cece looked at Long Houchen with some confusion, but the spirit of the tree of destruction into the seedling got stronger. Long Houghton raised his hand to the moon goddess, and then a strange golden glow burst from her body. The soft gold seemed innocently golden, but as it spread it made her scream. Her dark powers were instantly blocked. Then her body began to shrink. You put a curse on me? You bastard! Cece's voice grew shrill and tender, and in a moment, her body shrank to the size of a 3- or 4-year-old girl. She even needed both of her hands to hold that piece of moonstone. It was not just her vitality that declined, but also her strength. Although Cece was still the same, her powerful domain-level practice had disappeared. Nature could no longer drive the destructive force of life. So, you were mean enough to plant a seal inside me. Cece gave Long Houghton a grinning stare. She was originally beautiful, but after she shrank to the size of a little girl, she looked even more beautiful and lovely. The 6 wings on her back also became small and dainty, which looked funny. Long Houghton shook his head. It wasn't I who was mean. I saw through your lies, so I changed my mind. If Easton's king is an evil man, as you say, then I will do my best to help you. Unfortunately, you lied to me. No, not even the power of this tree of destruction can banish my seal. Yes, I certainly don't have the power of that dimension of the tree of eternity that you're talking about. But one thing I can assure you is that my light is at least the level of the tree of eternity. You lied. You lied, Cece muttered. You didn't see through my plan. It was your vile attempt to seize my treasures that you put the curse on me. Long Houghton smiled. What is done by night appears by day. I saw through your lies a long time ago. The first flaw in your words appeared when you thanked me before we took the action. Even in death, the soul goes to heaven instead of returning to the arms of nature. I suspected you then. As I remember you said before, men and elves in Easton are the children of the Lord of Nature. Later, before we went looking for cloves, you looked at my spirit wing with envious eyes and a trace of hidden greed. My perception is very high. Maybe you think it's seamless, but I found it nonetheless. It was too easy to get the cloves. And if it's holy, why not plant it in your cave? You said that all you left was a little smoke and mirrors. But according to my soul detection, there is an attack spell in your shadow which is as powerful as a forbidden spell. All this made me wonder, but it is not the most important. It was your concealment of strength that convinced me. I felt the spirit of Easton's king when we approached the eastern hill while you landed on the ground and marched forward. Although he was about to take a nap, his powerful senses covered a vast area, and just because the natural elements in the air fluctuated, something was missing. And as we went along, you directed me to change direction, to evade Easton's king's perception. That is to say, your perception is as good as mine, and how simple is it to be an 8th order sorcerer? Moreover, you walked according to your perception, which is not at ease with the masking power of my domain. In addition to these discoveries, here is my understanding of the world of Easton. I can tell you frankly, I did not belong to this world originally, but I have the same light as this world. The power of my soul is far above you, even above Easton's king. When you went to get the cloves, I used my force of spirit and this world's nature to carry out communication. When I communicated with them through a large tree, I felt their faith and their feelings towards Easton's king. I asked them with my soul. But not one of the creatures that answered my question was hostile to Easton's king. At that time, I confirmed my judgment. But I still came here with you because I wanted to see what is your real purpose. If I had exposed you, I would have left a ticking time bomb in Easton's world, and I was curious about your intentions. So, I came along with you. Fortunately, you didn't have any problem with the cloves. It's intoxicating, but it doesn't hurt. Otherwise, I would have done it already. Long Houghton, with a smile on his face that made his handsome face even more alluring, said, the wisest thing about you is that 90% of what you said to me is true, and only the most critical 10% is false. Along with the sincerity in your eyes and your beauty, it's really easy to fall for your lies. But even a wise man may miss, and you made so many mistakes. Before you went into the cave, my hand could be very helpful to you, as long as what you said is true. You didn't resist my power in order to gain my trust, and if I'm right, immediately after you entered the cave, you channeled my power of light out of your body with your water system. Right? Unfortunately, you can't guide out my domain power. You are not inferior to me in practice, perhaps even better than me. However, even your practice cannot cancel my curse after my domain invaded the body and takes root. The name of my skill in this field is controlling the course of life. Maybe I can't seal you like that gorilla, but at least I can seal you for an hour. Right? Your Majesty, the goddess of moonlight. The moon goddess answered, but you fought with Easton's king. Weren't you afraid that he'd kill you? What if you cannot beat him? How could you be so sure of yourself? Long Houchen said, yes, I didn't know if I can defeat Easton's king. But I was sure that he wouldn't kill me. You can't think of this because you don't know much about light and nature. What is the source of life? It's light and water. Nature is born under the action of light and water. I fought with Easton's king to get a closer look at his abilities. And as I expected, Easton's king had the purest elemental power and sphere of life. Can such a pure breath of life be possessed by the wicked? At the same time, I presented my domain to Easton's king and thought this was the first time we met. The mere fact of our nature made it impossible for us to be true enemies. And of course, we won't kill each other in battle. I had this judgment long before I came here. What else to fear? Long Houchen said this slowly with reason and details. His voice was calm, but it was thunderous to Cease's ears, the goddess of moonlight. You. Without the destructive force of life, Easton's king had reached Long Houchen. He glanced at him and said, it's terrifying to be a clever man. But I'm glad you didn't make a big mistake. Long Houchen made a gesture of pleasure and said, since this tree of destruction is under your charge, please take it back. Now Cease no longer resisted. Although she was still holding the seedling of the tree of destruction, she could not borrow the power of terror anymore. However, Easton's king, instead of going directly to retrieve the tree of destruction, frowned. Cease sneered. You are smart. But do you think this will stop the growth of the tree of destruction? You can kill me. But in the near future, when the Lord of Destruction grows up, the world of Easton will be its nourishment and all of you will die. Long Houchen frowned. Isn't it just a small seedling? Can't I destroy it now? Cease laughed hysterically with her child face and said, joke. This really is a joke. It seems like you do not belong to Easton. The tree of destruction is as immortal as the tree of eternity. After its seed sprouts in the stone, it can never be destroyed. If you don't believe my words, why don't you let the dwarf by your side to give it a try? His power is comparable to God's power. Ask him if he can destroy the tree of destruction. Long Houchen immediately turned to the Easton's king's side and gave him an inquiring look. Easton's king nodded gravely. She's right. Now we can only try to seal the seedling of the tree of destruction, to slow down its growth. Then I'll pray to the Lord of Nature and see if the Lord of Nature can separate the branches of the tree of eternity and seal the tree of destruction. Though Easton's king did not blame him, Long Houchen could hear the disapproval in his voice and said, I beg your pardon, Easton's king. I was being careless. I did not expect the moon goddess plotting like this. I must say, however, that your defenses against the seed of the tree of destruction are not very strong. Who would have thought she could have done that, said Easton's king, with a touch of shame. If you hadn't stopped me, I would have known she was about to attack the seeds of the tree of destruction and then we would have plenty of time to stop her. Long said, I started it. I'll end it. As I entered, I felt the aura of destruction. Easton's king, I ask you for the last time, do you want to destroy this tree of destruction so that it will never appear again? Easton's king grimly said, of course. My lord cannot destroy it, but he cannot allow it to affect the tree of eternity in his domain, so he left it under my charge. Who knew it would cause such a problem? Long Houchen nodded and said, in that case, you can leave it to me. To destroy the tree of destruction is not that difficult. As he spoke, he turned, raised his right hand, and beckoned slightly to the tree of destruction. The tip of the bright golden double-edged sword went straight towards the tree of eternity in Cease's hand. Cease still sneered with her mouth corner full of disdain. She failed today, but she had sacrificed her dark soul to the tree of destruction when she was praying just now. As long as the tree of destruction could grow shortly, there was still a chance that her soul would revive. Ding! The shaft of the sword fell on the tree of destruction and broke into a clear hum. A light purple mist formed a curtain of light that protected the tree of destruction. Long Houchen's sword tip failed to stir even a bit of purple light and died out. Long Houchen nodded slowly. It does have a strong defense. Cease sniffed and said, it is indestructible. Long Houchen smiled and said, don't be so arrogant. Nothing is impossible in this world. As he spoke, his hands rose slowly, making a hollow gesture in the air. Then, on his forehead, 9 lines of purple and golden light appeared. When the 9 lines of light appeared, Long Houchen, who had been full of light, had an evil spirit on his face. Even Easton's king was frightened, But he soon found that Long Houchen's Heart of Light had not changed, only its power had changed. Then Easton's king and Cece saw a great sword begin to creep out of Long Houchen's hollow hands. The purple and golden body of the sword looked so dazzling, especially the 6 heads at the hilt. All of them had cold eyes as if they were watching everything around them. The purple and gold heavy sword gave a slight hum to the artifacts in Easton's king's hands and the armor on his body. Easton's king asked, "My precious weapon got scared. What kind of sword is this?" Long Houchen smiled and said, "Since it came out for destroying the Tree of Destruction, let it be called the Destroyer. So, its full name is, the Destroyer, Purple and Golden Moonlight Sword." As he spoke, the purple and golden moonlight sword in his hand took a stunning rainbow and cut towards the Tree of Destruction in Cece's hands. This time, Cece felt a great threat. She did not fear that the Tree of Destruction was attacked, but she would be the next target after the Tree of Destruction. She did not have the same defense power as the Tree of Destruction. Both man and spirit had a strong desire to survive. Almost subconsciously, Cece released the stone in her hand. A purple and golden flash came and hit the Tree of Destruction in midair. The purple light that emerged from the Tree of Destruction appeared again, but it was not the same as the sword that got destroyed in an instant. This time, when its purple light and the purple and golden moonlight sword came into contact, the two produced a cohesive effect. In other words, the purple and golden moonlight sword stuck in the air when it came close to the stone of the Tree of Destruction. After a few seconds, the stone of the Tree of Destruction trembled violently. Layer after layer of purple light became more and more intense, so much that they looked like some shining purple stars. The purple and golden moonlight sword was still flowing with purple and golden glows, but the hilt of the 6 big eyes were all open, as if they had come back to life, watching the Tree of Destruction struggling with cold eyes. "No, it's impossible," Cece said pensively. "The destructive force bred in the Tree of Destruction even in its initial state could instantly destroy any force that attacked it. How can a situation of confrontation emerge?" The indescribable look was shown on her face and suddenly, the purple and golden moonlight sword changed its appearance. The original sharp blade instantly turned into a big mouth, one bite on the Tree of Destruction out of the layer of destructive energy and directly bit the sapling of the body. It exerted its incredible force to pull off the moonstone and then swallowed it. The Tree of Destruction suddenly turned into a mass of purple light and disappeared without a trace. With a lift of his right hand, Long Houchen drew in the stone that had lost the Tree of Destruction. He turned to the stunned Easton's king and asked, "Is this yours?" Easton's king shook his head and answered, "This is nature's treasure, not mine. You got it back. It's yours now." "But have you really destroyed the Tree of Destruction?" Long Houchen smiled and said, "Probably. Don't worry. There should not be any problem." As he entered Easton's king cave and felt the idea of destruction, the Hao Yu's state of mind came into Long Houchen's heart. Hao Yu was full of desire for the destructive force and constantly encouraged Long Houchen to take it away. But this was Easton's king's place, and Long Houchen certainly could not have done so without knowing the truth. At the same time, he became more suspicious of Cece. And Hao Yu also clearly told him that the destructive force, although pure and strong, was not enough to cause any damage. It could only become its tonic. With this, it could help to complete his final evolution in the shortest time. This was the first time that Hao Yu told Long Houchen that it was close to complete its final evolution. Long Houchen asked Easton's king if he wanted to destroy the Tree of Destruction completely in order to give Hao Yu a proper repair. It was not clear whether the Tree of Destruction had been completely destroyed or not, but he knew that what Hao Yu had eaten would never come out again. In particular, Hao Yu had told him earlier that the Tree of Destruction was not on the same layer as it was. There was no coming back. Cece was completely frozen as her last hope died. Suddenly, she screamed, put her hands on her head, and began to roll in pain. Such a wild cry of pain will not look good on a beautiful girl. Long Houchen was surprised, but this time he cannot contact the seal of the domain. Easton's king, what's wrong with her? When he saw that Cece was suffering, Easton's king was overjoyed. Strong human friend, you really did it, you really did it. She must have sacrificed all dark aspects of her soul to the Tree of Destruction. It must be now that the Tree of Destruction has been completely destroyed, and the dark side of her soul also shattered along with it. Part of her soul has been lost. That is why she is so miserable. You see, her dark powers are beginning to unravel. Ha ha, the night elf, moon goddess, has lost her power of darkness, and Easton will now be at peace for a long time to come. There will be no more threat from the Tree of Destruction anymore. Thank you, my friend. I, Easton's king, will give you my friendship forever. For Easton's king, the night elves were not a big threat, but they were always disturbing the peace of Easton. Especially this time, the moon goddess' evil attempts naturally made him full of vigilance. Now, moon goddess Cease's soul had been destroyed and she also lost the power of darkness, which meant that night elves lost their leader. Naturally they won't be able to turn up a storm. Much to Easton's king's delight, Long Houchen destroyed the Tree of Destruction. From now on, he could rest, and nothing in the world of Easton could threaten him. At that moment, Long Houchen suddenly was struck by a thought and unconsciously summoned the riven aria of the goddess of light and blue rain, Hibiscus of Light. The two Excalibur swords had left irreparable traces during the collision, and their breaths had grown very feeble. But Long Houchen still felt a faint but familiar breath of life from the two swords. With little hesitation, Long Houchen turned to Easton's king, who stood nearby and said, I need your domain of life's growth. Give me a hand. Easton's king quickly replied, no problem. Come. As he spoke, his dark green domain of life expanded and enveloped Long Houchen's body. Long Houchen raised his two swords slowly into the air, stared at them with burning eyes. He took a deep breath first before he calmed down, and the next moment, he slowly closed the two swords which might break at any moment. The golden light from the light god's domain rose, enveloping the two Excalibur swords. They merged, and the breath of life and creation appeared. But the force was so strong that the two Excalibur swords broke, and they began to hum a little. Long Houchen thundered, stand firm, she had gone through so much to give birth to you. Please truly unite now. Boom! The sword of life and creation exploded into countless specks of light. And the largest of these specks of light was a mass of gold. Long Houchen's gaze was fixed upon the mass of the golden light, and at the same time, all of the broken specks of light were covered by his domain of light. Time stopped. The forces that controlled the course of life were instantly overlaid upon these specks of light. A beam of golden light shot from Long Houchen's chest with his beating heart of eternity, directly into the golden light. Suddenly, the golden specks of light began to expand at an amazing speed, stretched, the breath of life had become more and more intense. It was as if a little golden embryo had been conceived, and the figure began to take on a life of its own. There were even 3 pairs of tiny light wings on the back. Her appearance gradually became clearer, more beautiful and soft, but so transparent and weak. Wasn't this Yating? Long Houchen's heart shattered at the time when he was struck down by the god of devils in the tower. And Yating was right at the hole next to Long Houchen's heart. The impact of god of devils was indeed too great, so much so that Yating's elvish body instantly shattered. Only the soul, which had fought with the sword of life and creation, had been saved by the Excalibur. But her soul was in an unconscious state because it was too weak. Ever since the resurrection, Long Houchen had been searching for Yating while he was practicing. After such a long search, along with his practice and evolution, again and again, he finally discovered a possibility that Yating was transformed into a sword spirit by 2 Excalibur swords. Only when they merged into the sword of life and creation that Long Houchen felt the breath of Yating. However, even if he knew that the soul of Yating might still exist, Long Houchen did not dare to act rashly. If 2 Excalibur swords were broken, Yating would probably be destroyed right away. She should stay in Excalibur. And what happened here finally gave Long Houchen an opportunity. The evolutionary domain of light gave him the magical ability to process life. He was using the power of his domain to force the evolution of Yating's weak soul. The process was complex, cumbersome, and a huge drain on Long Houchen's power. But he had Easton's king beside him. Therefore he was able to increase his domain power without any scruple. Gradually, Yating became stable. Long Houchen exhaled. At least he was sure that Yating in this state will not shatter easily. But things became even more complicated. Long Houchen began to instill the energy of the 2 broken Excalibur swords into Yating. By the virtue of his pure domain of light, the soul of Yating gradually increased to a very strong degree. Don't forget the fact that Yating had fused with the holy spiritual furnace, and the gestating power of the holy spiritual furnace which had slept in her soul became awakened. Both the aria of the goddess of light and blue rain and hibiscus of light were nurtured by Yating for a long time. At this moment, they were all broken. It wouldn't be so difficult to merge the pure energy into Yating's soul. However, the external force needed to be very strong. In the middle of the air, Easton's king's dark green domain of life in the outermost layer with Long Houchen's luminous domain of colorful gold inside was prominent to the eyes. And at its core, Yating emitted a soft golden glow. With the integration of the broken strength of 2 Excalibur, Yating's body gradually became solid, and the painful feeling of weakness gradually decreased. What Long Houchen injected into her was not only the broken strength of 2 Excalibur but also a huge vitality guided by light. Elves, even element elves, had a great thirst for vitality, not to mention that in the heart of Long Houchen, Yating had long been regarded as a pure element elf. Easton's king was indeed powerful, and his life domain showed no sign of weakening during the absorption process of Long Houchen's light domain. Moreover, it could be seen that from the outside of the cave, a large amount of life breath poured into Easton's king's domain, and then continued to increase for Long Houchen. As the master of the world, Easton's king had the supreme authority here. He was the spokesman of the Lord of Nature and the master of the forces of life. If Long Houchen's domain of light had not restrained him too much, he would not be suppressed. With the strong support of this ally, Long Houchen had no more difficulties in reconstructing Yating's body. He also relied on the power of the soul after the great evolution to constantly control his domain of light. Meanwhile, he helped Yating to reshape her body, and he tried to understand a variety of changes and the mystery of controlling domain which the domain evolution brought about. Now he could master the 9 levels of rank 3 of righteousness. Long Houchen's latest insight was that controlling the course of life could be very useful. The only drawback was that he didn't have strong offensive and defensive skills. Against a smaller opponent, this area of skill was unbeatable and can even make a variety of changes. But if the opponent also had a strong field, then his field skill could only be useful in some aspects. The waltz of the light domain is worse than the power attack. Of course, with the understanding of this domain, his domain of light had taken a big step forward and evolved to a more frightening level. Finally, when the last shard of Excalibur melted into Yating's body, Long Houchen's domain's movement stopped. Yating's whole body was emitting a mild golden glow. She couldn't make a sound at this moment. Her enormous spiritual power was undergoing a radical fusion. Inoculation of the holy spiritual furnace played a huge part along with prior assistance of Long Houchen's domain of light. The fusion of absorbed foreign energy not only helped Yating complete the reshaping of her body, but also made her more condensed. In the mild light elements, there was also a hidden spirit of Excalibur. Circles of white light began to emanate from Yating's body, and by that time it was she who was completing the fusion. All that Long Houchen could do had already been done. What level Yating could take next depended on her efforts. With a wave of his left hand, Long Houchen pulled the body of the moon goddess in the distance which had not moved for a while. She had lost her dark soul, and though her body was still alive, it was a mere corpse, a body without a soul. Long Houchen laid his left hand on the top of the moon goddess's head, and the domain of light rushed into her body. First, the seal was lifted off her body. And suddenly, moon goddess's body grew rapidly. Due to the previous shrinking to a mere 3 or 4-year-old body, her clothes had fallen off. The white, perfect body appeared in the sight of Long Houchen and Easton's king. Easton's king looked as if he had seen a ghost. He quickly turned his head and mumbled something. The beard on his face was shaking. It seemed that he was not afraid of heaven or earth but was very afraid of a woman's body. Long Houchen was much more calm. He quickly closed his eyes and let no evil be seen. But he did not move away. The domain of light invaded the body of the moon goddess. At this time, moon goddess had lost her soul, only her body was left, but her spiritual power was still very massive. After Long Houchen's spirit entered her body, he first explored one side and discovered that moon goddess was a dark and water double nature. The strength of the spirit was about the same as his before the evolution and was also level 9 of rank 2. Compared to Easton's king, she was not as good as Easton's king, but still, she was level 9 of rank 2. The power of light began to bloom in her body and tried to drive out the power of darkness. But soon, Long Houchen found that his doing was in vain. The dark attribute in moon goddess was very stubborn, although, without the guidance of the soul, it was impossible to wash her dark attribute unless Long Houchen destroyed her body. This was because the power of the Queen of Darkness was in her blood. The stubbornness of the darkness in her bloodstream was beyond his power awakened afterwards. This video will end here.